afternoon, everyone. It is 5 o'clock and time to call the work session for the City of Franklin to order. The first item on the agenda is citizen comments, and these comments are limited to non-agenda items. I do have one card, Rob Ann Leggin. If you want to come up here and speak for a couple of minutes, the topic is parking. Well, you can stand up if you want to stand up.
My name is Rob Ann Legan. I never speak in public, so I have brought a little note here so I can be quick and fast. I appreciate you guys listening to me. I'm here to talk to you about the 2-hour parking limit that was extended down to West 7th last summer. And I know that that was for the benefit of the commercial property owners, and I understand that parking is at a premium in downtown Franklin. However, from 6th to 7th Street, where my husband and I own a building, that we've owned it for 20 years, and that is office residential. And I have Stites and Harbison, the law firm in there, and it's a business group called Provision Group. And, they get there at 8 o'clock in the morning. So, whatever's happening, they got to move their cars at 10, then they got to move them at noon, then they have to move them at 2, then they have to move them at 4, and then they can go home at 5. And as you can imagine, it's really disruptive to their workday. And I feel like it hurts my property value for them not to be able to park. I do understand we have a major problem, but they're not there in and out. They just come to work for 8 hours. So I feel like that my property has been zoned commercial, but I'm not commercial, but I have to follow commercial rules. And that's all I wanted to say. I'm hoping you guys can give me a hand. I need some help. My tenants are really complaining, and they are really good tenants, and I would hate to lose them. And that's it. And I thank you for listening.
I just had one question. Is there parking on the campus of Starkville Harbison?
There are.
Parking on the campus?
There is.
Okay.
There are 6 spots, but
This
on
is-
6th Street, actually, my business group, they have arranged where even though they're kind of hanging out a little bit in the street, they can park 8 cars there. They've been really good. I've tried to, and on Main Street, I tell them not to do that. It blocks the sidewalk. But, and there's 2 in the front, and then they use those 8 spots in the back. And they jockey those cars around all day. But you can imagine the attorneys in a deposition like, oh my gosh, and all of them have gotten tickets.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right.
Go ahead.
I sound like a wife that's trying to tell her husband I was right, but I brought this specific property up when we did that. So it's a different beast than a retail situation, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I was worried this might happen, so I feel you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
So, Robin, are you saying that most of your employees, though, are parking okay, but the people that come to give depositions or they're there to come to the property are having the problem?
I think they're
Or
all
both?
having problems,
All of them?
actually. Yes. I talked to Christina at Stites yesterday, and she, they occasionally, I shouldn't bring it up, but they parked over across the street. And I said, you're not supposed to park there in the archives. I said, but they said, they've told people who come for a deposition if they're going to be there for an hour that they could park there for an hour. But I'm afraid, it'll drive, my tenants away. And obviously it will. I mean, if you can't park where you work and you can't be there for 8 hours.
So remind me again, all the diagonal parking is 2 hours along
Yes.
there, the entire strip? Okay.
And on 6th
I
Street
couldn't
as
remember if
well.
it was the whole thing. Okay.
How many?
Thanks.
How many employees are in that building?
In Stites and Harbison, I believe they have 3 full-time attorneys, and they have 1 or 2 that come, like they'll come 1 day a week. And then they have an office manager. And they have 2 parking spaces. They have the 2 in the front. And then Provision they have the 3 office spaces in the back on Sixth Street, and they're the ones that are doubling up and have 8 spots. And I am not real sure, they have actually told some of their people to stay home and just come in when they have a meeting. So they work out of and I couldn't tell you an exact count, and which, by the way, you're exactly right, Margaret. I meant to find that out before I came today, because I knew it was coming up.
Do you have a suggestion?
Yes, I do. Back to this suggestion, I feel like either we're commercial or we're not. I feel like the commercial stops at Sixth Street, and I quite frankly like being office residential. It's a good fit for that building, I think, and I think that commercial parking should stop at Sixth Street.
Okay.
I think the city administrator's heard. I think just take a look at that and see.
But in this, if you remember, when we talked about
Yes.
this block was one we talked about whether to extend it that far or not, and it is a transition, and so that was one of the issues that we sort of struggled with how far to take this. So this is something for us to think about, and if you all want to reconsider that, that's something we can certainly do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
The next item on the agenda is consideration of event permit for Mellow Mushroom. That's something they've done several years now. Anyone have any questions on that? If not, let's go to item 2, the event, consideration of event permit for Bluegrass along the Harper, sponsored by the Williamson County Cultural Arts Commission. They've also done that several years in a row. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Item 3, consideration of event permit for the Heritage Ball, sponsored by the Heritage Foundation on October the 5th at Eastern Flank Battlefield. Any questions? Item 4, resolution approving the adoption agreement form from America Supporting Americans in support of the 4th Battalion, 5th Group, Special Forces Group. We were going to withdraw that.
But they've actually asked for us to just defer it to the May 14th meeting because they want to have a representative here from Fort Campbell, and they were not able to make it tonight. So we'll just reschedule it for the next meeting, or if for some reason they can't make that, a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Item 6, consideration of City of Franklin Contract 2018-0270 Cumberland River Compact Partnership Agreement.
This agreement essentially captures a relationship we've had for several years with the Cumberland River Compact, as they work with us as a partner on a number of different initiatives around our work with the public, with initiatives around river cleanups, other work that we do, and have found that to be very valuable. Also assists us with our compliance with our MS4 stormwater permit and various other elements. So they're really a valued partner in some of the work that we've done, and we'd like to recognize that with a sort of an umbrella agreement that captures all those different relationships. Mikhail's here.
Yeah, so thank you, Eric. I'd like to introduce Mikhail Houghton. She is over Cumberland River Compact. And as Eric had mentioned, that her group works with Jeff Willoughby and his team throughout the year to primarily do educational outreach type efforts in support of the MPDS MS4 permit. So we have a number of items that we've kind of laid out that they would support us in. Mikhail, you're welcome to say a few things if you wish.
Sure. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the City of Franklin and have been working on this agreement probably since August last summer. And so there are a number of deliverables per year that we've that work well with us, both in Franklin and in other municipalities in the Cumberland River Basin. So our work is to engage citizens through education to become better stewards of our water resources. We feel really blessed to be working in a watershed that's as diverse as the Cumberland River Basin. So there's a lot for us to preserve here, and for sure, our water supply is one of the most, I think, attractive things that we have to offer. So Among the activities we'll be engaging in is stream adoptions. Those are when groups adopt a stream, and then mostly they're picking up trash for the first couple of years. They might move on to tree planting or things like that. Outreach at festivals. We have a tool called iCreek where people plug in their address and pull up their the condition of their neighborhood stream. Outreach into schools is something that we've been developing. We have a program called Creek Critters with a retired TDEC scientist who takes live critters to schools, and that's fun. HOA, we're finding with the adoption of green infrastructure, rain gardens, sometimes new homeowners don't know how to take care of that. So that's something that in our talk with Jeff Willoughby's group that came up as a need. And then just kind of some public outreach through rain garden classes and promoting sustainable agriculture at farmers markets and kind of educating the public about river-friendly farming practices. So we hope to create more demand for those sorts of agricultural products.
Thank you.
Any questions? Alderman Martin.
How do you reach the farmers? You know, we have a lot of pollution from farming, and I don't know how you reach farmers to help them with that information.
Yeah, so we've had the most success working through NRCS and the district conservationist. So they already have a trusted relationship with farmers. There's an exchange of technology that's been established, you know, for generations now. So we don't typically send our staff to talk to farmers. We work through the local farm support networks and get the introductions and convey the information through them. That's how we've had the best luck.
Okay, thank you.
Just have one comment. You mentioned rain garden classes. Where do you have your classes? What do you teach? Or do you come to neighborhoods or what?
Typically, we've done classes for teachers on a Saturday morning, and then the real draw of the classes is that they get free plants for their rain gardens. So that's really what encourages people to come. And we'll do homeowner classes. People can plant rain gardens that attract butterflies, or So we do them at libraries, at community centers, at schools, at parks. And we invite the general public to participate. It's a form of community education. Even if they don't plant a rain garden, they start to know what they're seeing when they drive around town and see rain gardens.
Right. I think there's probably more opportunities for that, so that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item 6, resolution authorizing the pre-ordering of equipment prior to commencement of the new fiscal year. Mr. Stuckey, you're up.
Yes, this is an item we'd like your approval on. This specifically relates to some equipment we need to replace in our sanitation and environmental services area. Some of the side loaders, the packers that we have, are at a point where they desperately need to be replaced. The challenge is it takes us 10 to 12 months lead time to get the equipment in. So this resolution would grant authority for us to go ahead and start the order process early. By the time we meet next and you vote on this item, you'll have my recommended budget that will likely include 3 or 4 pieces of that equipment. And they are at a point at which it's rather expensive to continue to keep them operating. So we would like to get a jump on that and get that order started early, and that will save us, we think, 3 or 4 months lead time compared to if we wait till the beginning of the new fiscal year to place the order. So you'll still approve the budget that grants that final authority, but we'd like your authorization to go ahead and start that process and make that order in May so that we can get that started and get it as soon as we practically can.
Any questions? Margaret?
I know that down the line on the agenda, we're going to talk about the solid waste, the change from the blue bags to the cans. Is there going to be a long wait for that order to come in?
Those would be rolled out, excuse the pun, in January of 2020. And so we would expect to start the sign-up process for that in the summertime and start getting people to sign up for them, but then we would deliver them in January, and they would be able to start using them with that change in service at the first of the new year. But
Would
that
we-
will work fine with that lead time. We don't need to order
We don't
those
need to
earlier.
pre-order.
We don't need to do, this is major
I know
equipment.
I know it says that. but-
Yeah, but we're comfortable with that timeline in terms of getting that direction from you and going forward with that transition to the rollout containers for recycling.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Eric. Let's go to item 7 then, presentation discussion of self-insured workers' compensation program.
I'll ask Kevin and Sarah and Laura to come on up and help present on this. This is something we touched on a year ago when we were preparing the current budget and ended up not getting far enough along that we were comfortable fully integrating it into our budget, but we have continued to look at it and work on it and are anticipating that this might be something we want to integrate in the new budget. So we'd like to go back over how a self-insured approach to workers' compensation might work for us, its potential benefits, and how we would manage any risks associated with a change in how we'd manage it. And Kevin and Sarah, who have worked on this, will lead that presentation, and Laura Young-Michael, who works with us on our insurance needs on a consulting basis, will also be here as well. So.
Well, very good. As Eric says, I'm up here with Sarah Silvas, our risk and benefits manager, along with Laura Young-Michael, our broker and consultant. And yes, we're here to advise the board that we're investigating moving from a large deductible commercial workers' comp insurance program to a self-insured or a self-funded workers' comp program. And the reason is, it's just like we do with our health insurance. If we're self-funded, there are certain advantages to that, and we think that'll be the case for us. We're going to walk you through how we got there, but let me just go ahead and tell you, if this works out for us, there's a potential that we could save on our pure premiums. When I say save, we're talking about the potential of saving 50% of our premiums. Then we can also reduce the claims management fees. What I'm talking about there are the network savings that would be reduced. We would reduce upfront administration costs, bill review savings, case management savings, and the per claim handling fee savings. So again, that's a possibility. But it's not just about the money, it's also about controlling the administration of our claims. That'd be the third point. And the fourth would be to ensure the proper care of our employees. If we go to this model, we're gonna have to secure a third-party administrator that will be dedicated to making sure our employees are treated the way we need them to be treated if they have a workers' comp injury. And then there is another financial impact, and that is with the cash collateral. Currently, under the large deductible program, we've got to deposit cash collateral with a carrier. That this year was somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000. That's money that we don't have access to. We can't invest, and we cannot get interest on while it's with a carrier. And that money isn't returned to us after the year. That money is returned to us, and it's totally ours after a 7-year period. So the point there is there's a lot of potential savings if we go to this self-insured model. So Sarah's now going to run us through why, what we've done in the past and why we think it makes sense to investigate it now.
Okay, so just to give you a little perspective on what our program history is, we were insured through an insurance pool from 1979 to 2012. For those years, we had guaranteed cost work comp coverage, so we were fully insured. We paid a premium at the beginning of the year, and all claims were paid by the pool. As we continued to grow and maintain a good loss experience, we started utilizing a per occurrence deductible. So kind of in the mid-1990s, we went to $1,000 per occurrence deductible. And then as we grew, we went to $5,000 to then $10,000 per occurrence. In fiscal year 2011, we switched to a modified self-insurance program. We actually had that for 2 years. So we assumed the risk up to an attachment point for all claims. We then went out to bid in 2012, switched to traveler's insurance, which is commercial insurance. Like Kevin said, it was a large deductible program. It was similar to what we had with the pool, but we had a $100,000 cap per claim. What resulted in switching to Travelers is we had more efficient claims administration while saving city dollars with excellent bill review and repricing. Since we have been with Travelers for 7 years, our attachment point has grown due to the increase in our payroll and number of employees. So the max retention started out at 701.26. Currently, it's 896,400. So basically, for the past 9 years, including the self-insured program with the pool, we have already assumed a greater level of risk. The premise behind it is if the loss experience is good, we have an opportunity to control our work comp costs through good loss experience.
What is an attachment point? What does that mean?
I'll jump in.
There you go. An attachment point is the maximum amount that you would be responsible for paying for work comp claims. So there's usually two parts to that. There's a per claim stop loss, and then the aggregate amount, which is the most you would pay out in any 1 year for total work comp claims. So your stopgap loss was $100,000 for a claim. And as Sarah said, the last year, I think it was $896,400, which means that would be the most that you would pay in claims. The good news is, in the past 7 years, you've only had 2 work comp claims that have exceeded $100,000. That is excellent. And I got to congratulate your HR and risk management department, because they do a great job with training. They do an excellent job with working to create a safe working environment, to get the buy-in of employees to create a safe work environment. So to have only 2 claims over $100,000 for an entity your size, with the hazardous exposures that you have, police, fire, I mean, there's a lot there. That's excellent. And in none of those 6 years have you even closely attached, come close to that attachment point. Your maximum losses in 2013, fiscal year 2013, was only $231,000 for total claims, which is an excellent result. The worst year you had was $554,000, and again, with an attachment point around to $800,000. So you have the protection on a per claim basis, and then you've got a maximum amount that you would be responsible for in paying for claims. And above that, it's what's called pure premium or excess coverage, where if you hit that amount, the carrier pays from then on for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No, that's
Sarah.
okay.
I shouldn't
It's
have
okay.
done
So then it just comes down to, there we go. So that's why we think it makes more sense to investigate it at this time. Our claims history is great. So you probably think, what are our next steps? Currently, we've sent out a RFP for a third-party administrator. And that third party, we have 5 third-party administrators to judge what they submitted. We're going to interview the top 2 candidates. And from that, we're going to figure out, is there a third-party administrator that we want to work with that would make sense? And then we'll have some real numbers to come back to the board and share with you to tell you if, through our analysis, if we were to compute what the fees would be with this third-party administrator, if during our worst years and our bad years, if it makes sense, if it would have made sense to have a self-insured model, then that would be the staff's advice to the board.
What kind of time frame you thinking you're going to have this information back to us?
What would you think, Sarah?
Hopefully the next board meeting.
Oh, okay. So it's
Because
moving.
we're
You're
in the
moving.
process of right now evaluating the TPAs.
Okay. Great.
So we could possibly look for that at the next workshop then. Okay.
Hopefully.
Any other questions from the committee? Ann?
I just like that, the other thing that hasn't been said, but it was up on, in our materials about what does it mean to be self-insured? Might be something that we might say a sentence or two about.
Okay, so what it means to be self-insured, so it, like Kevin said, it works a lot like our medical insurance. So rather than paying an insurance company to pay our claims for us, we essentially pay them ourselves through a third-party administrator. So, and then also, instead of sending the cash collateral to them, we would keep it in-house, invested, or earn interest on it, and it stays within our budget and is controlled by the city. The compensation itself doesn't change, the workers' comp, we still follow Tennessee work comp law. It's basically the method we use to pay the claims is changing. And we also, an important piece of that is we have more control on how claims are managed.
Scott?
So I guess my one question, do we run any risks because we're the ones hiring the third-party administrator and they're the ones potentially approving the claims? I mean, versus their, outside insurance company, we've kind of offloaded that to where up or down versus if they approve a bunch of claims and we replace them. I don't know, do we have any risk on that? And second question would maybe, I know we're automating a lot of the sanitation things. Maybe does that help potentially reduce some of our workers' comp claims? I'm assuming a handful of those came
Sure.
from sanitation?
Yes.
That would be yes to both of those questions. Just from the standpoint of, you're right, with an insurance carrier, typically, you turn over the administration of the claims to them. They follow the work comp law and will notify you, where the claim appears to be going and whatever potential settlement according to the work comp law. As Sarah said, you're still going to be following the work comp law. However, you're actually going to have a little more say-so and involvement in the administration of the claims. The TPA is going to look to risk management for more direction. From the standpoint of, do you think that, would you like us to get a case manager involved on a particular claim to go with an injured employee to the doctor? All of the things that you do from the standpoint of any sort of safety, especially with back injuries with the automation, is awesome because that just gives you an added advantage in reducing the opportunity for any sort of an employee injury.
So what we'll look at as we bring this forward is and there's a couple slides before this where it gives you those 7 years of history. We'll try to kind of look at that in terms of what's a typical year look like, and if we went to a self-insured model, what are those potential savings? There's a potential of what happens in the occasional bad year, and so what is our exposure there? I think it has a lot of promise, but we want to make sure we walk you through how it all works. And as Kevin said, it's pretty similar to how we handle our medical insurance program, where we manage that, but we have a certain attachment point where higher cost cases are taken on by a reinsurer. So that would be in place here too to protect us against a real high cost individual case or a collective issue for us. So that's what we'll try to assess with you with all those costs. We believe there's potential for significant savings and still be able to manage our program very effectively. Sarah and her team do a great job of working with both being proactive and preventing, but also working with individuals once an unfortunate incident happens and somebody gets hurt on the job. But our performance has been really, really strong, and part of that's because we put investment in being upfront with it, with the training and the other work that we do. And so that would continue under whatever model we choose. But that's really what we'll bring back to you is try to apply it to what our experience has been and how that might, what that might look like going forward.
Yeah, and I do want to stress too, when we look at these TPAs, we still, it's important to look at cost savings, but we also don't want to go backwards on customer service. We want to make sure our employees are taken care of when they're injured. So that is a very important piece that we'll look at as well.
Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate that information. Let's go to item 8. Consideration of procurement award to Willis Towers Watson of Nashville, Tennessee, in the total annual fixed flat fee amount of $56,000 for group employee insurance benefits, consulting services for the Human Resource Department, purchasing office procurement solicitation number 2019-007. $50,000 budgeted in for the fiscal year 2019. I left out a couple of numbers in there.
That's okay. This is really just, we went out for proposals related to consulting services, as this says, that help us with our employee insurance program. And we had used a different consultant before that had gone through an acquisition. We were due to go out and check out our options anyway. And Willis Towers Watson is a group that's got a national practice and somebody that we think will be a good match for working with us and our needs. And this helps us manage our health insurance programs, our benefits programs for our employees. So this is an important kind of augmentation to our staff to have on board.
Any questions from the committee? Kevin, Sylvia, either one of y'all comments?
Just one other thing, and Eric said it all, but by going to Willis Towers Watson, it's the largest in this field. They bring with them a lot of tools that we get for free, a lot of different services that we get for free. So it makes sense to go to them. They did. We had a panel of 4 look at what they provided, look at their application. We interviewed the top 2, and it was clearly they were the best fit for us.
Any other questions? Thank you. Let's go to item 9, consideration of resolution number 2019-23, a resolution for the City of Franklin Employee Pension Plan, providing a cost of living adjustment to the monthly benefits for retired recipients. Christine, you're up.
Thank you. This is the same resolution format that we've had the last few years. We do a calculation for the cost of living increase on the closed pension plan. It's based on the CPI that's released in March. The calculation is a change from the March of the prior year. The calculation for this year's increase is 2.04%, very close to last year was a 2.1%.
So this would be an adjustment we would make effective July of 2019 on the pension payments for our retirees on the closed plan.
Ann?
I just wanted to say that I know those people appreciate getting this so that it will be in effect on July the 1st. Years ago, we had a little problem with that, so that I know that they will appreciate that.
Scott?
And I guess we have the cost of living built in every year, but this is just an annual resolution to kind of state the increase. Is this close to like the Social Security increase in March that happens close, I guess?
Well, of course, the Social Security Administration does their timing differently than we do. Based our plan documents call for it to be a July rather than a winter time. So it certainly is based on a different month. But ours is, our resolution refers to the calculation, and then we do the calculation when those numbers are released, which actually the March CPI was just released right before the deadline for this meeting. So that calculation is based on the April announcement of the March CPI compared to the change from the year before.
And we're sort of working back from a July effective time. That seemed to be where we wanted to make that adjustment. So this is the closest number to give us the lead time administratively to make the adjustments for folks.
Any other questions on the cost of living increase for the retirees? Thank you. Let's go to item 10, consideration of City of Franklin contract number 2019-0087, engagement agreement with Evans Petrie PC for employee pension plan legal counsel.
This is a continuation of the outside counsel we use for our pension legal consulting needs, and we are due to kind of update this agreement. We're very pleased with the service and the expertise of this outside counsel, and would like to continue that arrangement. It's a hourly arrangement. We pay for the services we use.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Vice Mayor, I would also note that there's no change to the hourly rates for this contract, the same hourly rates as they've currently been operating under.
Any questions concerning this? This is the council that we use for our pension and trust committee. This gentleman shows up at the pension and trust committee meetings, answers any questions that we have, and I'm sure Christine is in contact with him quite often, quite
Shauna as
frequently
well.
on. Shauna is?
As
Okay.
well, both.
Shauna is, all
Shauna
right.
is, and he helps Kevin and I a great deal.
All right, let's go to item 11 then. A resolution approving reimbursement offset of road impact and parkland impact fees paid by the Franklin Housing Authority for the Chickasaw Senior Community, a project to construct 48 new multifamily dwelling units for low-income senior adults.
This is a request that has been made by the Franklin Housing Authority for reimbursement of these fees that you just described, the road impact and the parkland fees that are associated with the Chickasaw project. You may recall over the summer, I believe it was, we talked about this request, and the request had been made, but we wanted to work it through a broader policy discussion. The Housing Commission did give you a proposal a few meetings back, and I would expect at our next meeting that you'll see some additional staff review of that proposal. But one of the elements that had been discussed originally that was not necessarily reflected in what the Housing Commission brought forward was something that would address what the Housing Authority had requested, which is a project of this nature. Specifically, this is a project that ties into the low-income tax credit program, and this is utilizing that, and so this request has been made related to this specific project. Should the board want to move forward with this, we would recommend that reimbursement take place in this fiscal year, and we move forward with an amendment to accommodate it. I know folks are here from the Housing Authority if they want to speak to their specific request, but we brought this forward based on their request. But I will tell you, when staff brings this back to you, I would expect we will incorporate an element that addresses a low-income tax credit project, which would incorporate the Housing Authority. And that is a program that a private entity could also potentially utilize. So those are all things that you may see as we have a broader policy discussion, but this specific request has been made, and we've drafted a resolution to give us guidance on how you want to proceed with this. And the total amount is just under $480,000 for the offset of those two fees.
Any questions from the committee? If not, I would invite Derwin, Susan, and Scott maybe to come up and go ahead and ask.
So it's also available to private entities, you said? I just want clarification on that.
This request and proposal right now is specific to the Housing Authority request. And that's what, there's some information in your memo about that, and the unique character of the Housing Authority as it was set up per the Housing Authority's law and so on. So this specific request right now is strictly for the Housing Authority, and we'll be back to you at your next work session discussing the broader program possibilities.
What I was addressing is when we talk about the broader policy, you may want to look, and we'll probably give you an option that looks at saying, well, you may want to extend it to a low-income tax credit eligible project or project that's using that, because that maintains a certain rental rate for a 15-year period and could tie into meeting some affordable housing needs. Housing Authority is the one using it generally right now in the community, but there could be others that could choose to use it in the future, and you might want to leave that option open.
And just to be clear, the Housing Authority is an entity put together by the city of Franklin,
What's a
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
the
wanna
short
clarify.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Alderman Martin.
Well, I just wanted to say what Bev said. It is an arm of the city. And for that reason, I have no qualms about this kind of reimbursement. I think I don't know how we extend it to other entities, but I'm sure we'll come up with something. So anyway, we're glad that we pretty much are in agreement about this.
Any other questions? Earl, would you like to?
I would just, is it on?
He's got it.
I would just like to just thank you for allowing me to be here, and just always to thank this board and thank the city staff and Eric and all them. They have always been supportive of our efforts. You know, we ask for a lot of things. Some things they say we just can't do. One thing that Mayor Moore and Mayor Anderson told me years ago, whatever I need, they said to ask. We can always do it, but he said to always ask. And so I do just want to thank for the support that this board and this city has given us. And I would like to come back probably in another month to really give you a update on our entire master plan, of what we have, what we've done, the things that we've got coming up. One of our next major projects is probably going to be a $20 million project. We're going to build 150 units. So I want to come back and share all that with you. And so your continued support for us and what we're doing, we gladly appreciate it.
Alderman Black.
I just want to say that, yes, I do feel like they're an arm of the city of Franklin, but I think what's even more important to note is the history of how long you've got, not you particularly, Derwin, but Franklin Housing Authority has been here. If you look at some of the older models, if you will, that have been here for 50-plus years, they've been serving the need of affordable housing before it even became a need that we face today. So I think that it's important, not that you be the only one, because I think there's different levels of attainable and things like that, but without your work and investment in our community, the demographics of who we are would look totally different, and that's not something I would like to see. So I just thank you all for carrying the torch and continuing to provide not only what you have done product-wise, but the new products you're introducing that keeps generations that have been here longer than that 50 years with Reddick, with now Chickasaw, but then also the other new things that you've brought to us. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Alderman Bransford.
And just pretty much a continuation of that, Franklin Housing Authority, thank goodness that we have you all as partners with us here in the city, because a lot of areas that do not really invest in their public housing entities, really do a disservice to the community. But what has happened in this community over the years have been a lifesaver for a lot of families. And you'll be surprised, many people in this city who not necessarily from the city will be surprised how the Franklin Housing Authority has been a support system for so many of our local families in our community. And I would like to see that continue to happen. In whatever way the city of Franklin, my little part I play here to make that happen, I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions or comments? Thank you. And we look forward to a month and the projects that you've got and the upgrade on what we're looking at. So we'll look forward to that in about a month then.
Thank you.
Let's go to item 12, consideration of resolution 2019-25, a resolution to approve the annual action plan for community development block grant funding for program year 2019-2020, which is year 5 of the City of Franklin Consolidated Plan. Tom?
Go ahead.
Kathleen?
Take it away.
You all have approved this, as Vice Mayor said, this is the 5th year of the 5-year plan. It's pretty straightforward. We're following the same paths: emergency rehab, fair housing, public facilities, which has helped Franklin Housing Authority, and we will follow the same path forward.
So as an entitlement city, we get approximately between $250,000 and $300,000 a year for these purposes. And so you've outlined a plan for us. This is the 5th year of that plan. This follows, as Kathleen said, that general guidance. Kind of the shorthand of it is it's to benefit low and moderate income individuals and families. And so that's how we've allocated it in ways that we feel fit our community and where those dollars will have the best benefit. And again, we're anticipating about $300,000 allocation this year.
Any other questions? Margaret?
How long has this been going on? How many years?
We became an entitlement city in 2007.
Okay.
So,
So we've had that much money every year. Do we spend it all?
oh, yes. We spend it all, and I must remind you all, because you're a big part of this, I reach out to the community, and with your support, we get a lot of leverage. We have a lot of people that partner with us. So our $250,000 may not seem like a lot, but when you are leveraging that with partners and home
Contributions.
yes, contributions, we've done a lot of good work with it.
Oh, go ahead.
And it's all used to rehab, all used for rehab, correct, or not?
That,
Since
if you
you
saw
have-
it in the breakdown of the
have a couple
report,
of those.
we've used emergency repair funds in the past, and there's also community-based development organization funds that we've used with partners like Habitat for Humanity, Community Housing Partnership, and the Hard Bargain Agency to build new houses. Everything from actually purchasing a lot, which we did in the last few months. You may recall seeing in a contract where we helped one or two of those agencies purchase a property. We've also used community development organization funds to reimburse them for actual construction costs. And the other large area we did in just the last few months was public facilities, which we used to reimburse the housing authority for some of the water and sewer infrastructure work that they did on the Chickasaw project, I think.
Yes.
And you'll see in the proposal for the next, we found that the public facilities is a good area to spend a lot of money quickly. And so you'll see there's a good allocation in the next program year for more public facilities work, whether it be the housing authority or one of the not-for-profit partners that comes forward with a project that is actually public infrastructure.
And when you bought a lot, you put money towards that, right? You partnered with other people in that,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Actually, it was when we expend the funds, it's always on a reimbursement basis. So
Right,
it's
okay.
one of our not-for-profit partners that actually expends the funds, whether for purchase or construction, and we reimburse them.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go to item 13, discussion on the development impacts to the South Prong Interceptor.
So we want to have a discussion with you to talk about some themes that we're seeing develop as we see more development and redevelopment, especially in the Cool Springs area, and highlight for you some of the impacts that may have on our infrastructure and the capacity of that infrastructure. So that will lead us to some policy choices and some discussion we want to have with you. This is really of an introductory nature in terms of walking through the specific implications in the South Prong interceptor area and how infrastructure is sized in a certain way. And as development and redevelopment progresses, there will be needs to enhance that infrastructure. And how we allocate those costs with new infrastructure, the update of our impact fee structure to maybe provide for some more specifically tailored fees in areas where infrastructure is going to need to be, or sanitary sewer in particular is going to need to be increased. The capacity is going to need to be increased. So Michelle and Mark and Vernon will walk you through that. And this is really to start to get you to think through some of the infrastructure planning implications of the types of development and redevelopment we're seeing coming into our process now. So I don't know who's next. Vernon, do you want to start us out?
Thank you, Eric, Vice Mayor and Alderman. As Eric mentioned, this is the initial discussion on this particular topic. And the purpose of tonight, besides providing you this introduction, is really twofold. First of all, Mark will share with you where we are at today and a little bit of the history of updating the city's water and sanitary sewer impact fee model, okay? And then secondly, Michelle and us will talk through a small area in the Cool Springs area that's served by the South Prong Interceptor, as Eric had mentioned, that needs to be upgraded with all the recent development and future development that is served by that section of sanitary sewer pipe. For a little bit of a two things. First of all, the water and sanitary sewer impact fee model has essentially two components to it. First of all, the treatment facilities. We have a water treatment facility off Lewisburg, and then we have the sewage treatment facility over by Franklin High School. And then, so we have treatment facilities, but then you also have conveyance systems, the pipes in the ground. And you may remember that several months ago, we talked about a capacity fee model over in the Boyd Mill area for a small development, and you eventually approved a resolution. What we're going to talk about here is a capacity fee model for the South Prong Interceptor applied to those developments, quite dense developments, that will be served by the upgrades. And we don't want to include those upgrades in the overall sanitary sewer impact fee model because it would inflate those costs throughout the city, but rather have a separate capacity fee for those properties and developments that will benefit from the upgrade of that section of the South Prong Interceptor. So hopefully as we explain that, that'll become clear. We have some illustrations. But also after this meeting, we wanted to introduce this to you first before we meet with the stakeholders that are planning and have approved developments that will be served by the South Prong Interceptor. And then we'll come back to you with a resolution similar to what we did in Boyd Mill that outlines the specifics of a capacity fee. So with that, Mark's going to give us an update on where we are in upgrading the citywide impact water and sanitary sewer impact fee model.
Thank you, Vern. As you know, impact fees are paid by the development community to buy into the existing infrastructure that the city has built over time, and also to fund future projects such as additional wastewater treatment capacity. The last time that the impact fees were updated was late 2000s. It's been a long time. In 2011, 2012 timeframe, we had come back before you and to look at updating those fees. And I think at that point they're kind of coming out of the economic downturn. We tabled that. Back in 2016, we approached you to talk about the way we structure our impact fees. Right now, we base it on a meter size. And the meter size is a pretty coarse tool in order to identify what the impact is to the system. So right now, Michelle and her team are working with our consultant to reevaluate those numbers. In addition to that, working to develop language to propose to you all a single-family unit equivalent approach, which at that point you can get better clarity on what truly the impacts are from a development, whether it's a single-family home or a larger multi-family or multi-use development, and really apply the appropriate cost to that developer. When you do it on a meter size, you're encouraging the developer to downsize meters, not size them appropriately, so they pay lesser fees. And there's always that kind of that struggle where you want to size the meter appropriately, and get the appropriate fees based on the impact. So that's going to be coming forth within the next couple of months for you all to work with us through and consider. And I think from that, we'll off with Michelle.
We'll get down to the good stuff.
So what you're saying is, Mark just
am I
got
not-
this
is it-
fluff.
Can you help us? It's not moving.
It's not advancing? Is there like a power button on here? You can go to the next slide.
It's all grayed out, so you might have to reboot it.
All right, so I'll just, the next slide is the outline of this, yeah. So we're just, So we're just really going to talk about how we process availability requests when we receive them from a developer or a single family. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. So how we process them, how the water department has moved toward tracking them a little bit better. The South Prong Interceptor, kind of where it is and the status of where it is right now. We'll look at the densities of it currently and the densities of it, the proposed densities, and then kind of some of the anticipated costs and some of the next steps that we have as a department in a city to make. Let's see. So to kind of preface this, the intent of this presentation is to share with you kind of some of the issues that are at hand right now. The next steps that we'll do is to kind of start those conversations with developers, with representatives of developers, to kind of see their intent on when things are proposed versus how that jives with our design and construction timeline. So this isn't the final end all. There's still lots of things to happen after this. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. All right, so when we receive availability requests, that's one of the first steps toward a development happening. We receive a hard copy request from the developer. The developer's engineer will calculate the SFUE, so the single family unit equivalents that they would require, so how much water they would require. What we do with that is that we typically then in turn correlate that to how much sewer they're going to have. We have based on a hydraulic model that we've developed, that we had a consultant develop, we have a capacity tool, which really is just kind of a basic skeletalized system of our model of our collection system. We can input a flow into a nodule, essentially. It'll tell us if that pipe is over capacity. It's a really simplified version of that. We update that model every couple years when we do flow monitoring. We do wet weather flow monitoring in the winter months. That will kind of see with all of the rain we have what our collection system capacity is at. So the purpose of me telling you that is it's a very dynamic model. We do our due diligence to try and make sure that the numbers that we have are accurate. So the numbers that intend go to developers are pretty accurate. That model is then correlated with our GIS, which is kind of our spatial imaging. So that gives us kind of this overview that we'll look at in one of the diagrams that we have. What's the next slide? Okay, so I know we've talked a lot about South Prong. This is kind of just a general area overview of where it is. So South Prong is kind of the tealish basin. That is the area kind of on the east side of I-65, kind of the McEwen area. The area that's highlighted is not the entire basin, but it's the basin. It's the part of the basin that we anticipate having the most development flows from, the most infill, and then redevelopment and just development in general. So it's important to note that you can see the lines, kind of the lines going through this interceptor. They dump into the purple basin, which is Spencer Creek. So it doesn't just, so this South Prong basin doesn't just impact South Prong, it then impacts Spencer Creek, which then flows to the wastewater plant. So we're potentially, we have a downstream ripple effect that is going to affect all of our interceptors. The Spencer Creek basin is good to know is that that includes Cool Springs, which is, I think we already know is potential for a hotspot for infill development. So we go to the next slide, Vicki. All right, so this is just kind of a summary of, the table is kind of a summary of availabilities that have already been approved. So I'm not gonna go through all of these because you've probably heard of most of them. In total, we have about over 6,000 SFUEs that has been approved. So that is a lot of sewer that we anticipate coming to this area. Our capacity tool, so we've plugged all of these in, and we'll look at some images in a little bit, but the capacity tool indicates that there's an exceedance in that line. We didn't anticipate, while we anticipated when we put that line in for development, we didn't anticipate all the redevelopment and the infill that would happen with taller buildings with a little bit more density than initially planned.
And that's all the proved here.
These are all the ones that we've received thus far. It's not everything that's in that basin. So yeah, so that's
there are some still under review as well.
That one more time.
There are some still under review as well. So these are the ones that have been either approved or have approached planning to go through that review process.
So when I see, okay, my thing keeps going off. I can't look at it.
These are in review. These are approved. These are in review.
Yeah.
So I think
So in other words, let me just ask you. So
Yeah.
Garden Club Estates Court, that says 155. That's approved. That's done. because they're not building anymore over there.
Well, it has been approved for sewer availability, the entire construction process, or I'm not sure where that stands. I'm just looking at it from, we're allowing them to connect to our sewer.
Let me try
Yeah,
to
go
help.
That's been around for
Thank
quite a
you.
while, so I'm not understanding
Yeah,
that.
let me-
And
let me-
and I can't look at it because well, there it is, it's back up maybe.
That's it. What you see are projects that have approved, and some could be under development or completed development, some that are in review. And then there's those that our team has looked at that are ripe for redevelopment.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the purpose of our discussion is to show you that with all the development, with those three types of development, existing, approved, being developed, in review, and future, that this South Prong Interceptor is going to need to be replaced. And right now, as we want to work with the developers, those that we've recently approved, because we can keep them going, but we also realize that when they all build out, that pipe has to already been replaced. So hopefully that helps a little.
So, okay, to continue, I want to understand this before you go to the next slide, if you don't mind. So are you saying that some of these things that have already been developed then will be having to have upgrades to them? And the pipes will have to be upgraded as well?
For the purposes of redevelopment, yeah. So, does that?
Yeah,
Well,
it's own, like they came, let me give an example. This whole thing with Montgomery Place. They came in because the pipes were never the right size to begin with. So they had to tear up everybody's lawns. They had to go in there and repipe the whole thing. Is that ever going to happen in any of the stuff that we're talking about? That's what I'm curious about.
So the local developments, we're not looking at those. Those should be in good condition.
Okay.
What we're concerned with, and I think Michelle's going to share a map with you here shortly, are the larger interceptors. So we've anticipated X amount of growth and density in this area from years ago. Those densities have increased dramatically.
Yep.
And I think some of these are actually not in South Prong, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
this is
I see
an
some.
example of all the interest in redevelopment in Cool Springs in general.
Exactly.
So our focus tonight is the South Prong because that's where we're seeing the most interest occurring now. But this is a concept that we're gonna talk with you about more broadly in areas of potential higher redevelopment.
All right,
So the issue is, and here's one of the things that's really, and I think Michelle's going to touch on it, but we're not in imminent failure of water coming out of the ground. These are projects that are 5+ years in
Okay.
the making. So what we anticipate, and there's a difference between the capacity and the reserved capacity of a pipe. But when we have a development come in, we want to reserve the capacity. We don't want to continue adding and adding and adding. We want to make sure that we have that set aside, so when the development finalizes, then we have the ability to
difference.
serve it. So that's a concept that we want to make sure that that's clear, so.
So I think
Sorry.
capacity and reserve capacity makes a lot of sense. The other thing is that Primus building in the South Prong, or is it on Spencer Creek? All right, thanks.
So I think I think that the next slide will
That-
help clarify
that
quite a
helped.
bit for
That
you.
helped.
So,
Thank you.
Before you go to that next slide, Alderman Martin.
oh, yep.
All right, I think you answered this, but I didn't really understand it. Would you ever say to these developers who are coming in and we find we're at capacity or will be at capacity with what you've got on here, would you ever say your development cannot happen now?
At a point, yes. I mean, if we don't move forward with improvements, then yeah, we're gonna,
you don't
we're
just-
gonna run out of capacity.
You don't just give them permission and say, well, we're hoping down the
No,
road it'll be there?
We assess capacity with everything we grant. And we're trying to, the reason we're having this discussion is so that we can be in front of that issue. So as greater redevelopment happens and in densities that have already occurred and what may occur in the future, put more demand on our system, we want to have an approach that will provide for that capacity.
Or say, no more?
That's the policy decisions you're going to have to make.
Okay, that's good.
This is the framework we're trying to provide you with.
Alderman Peterson.
Just to go back to the Boyd Mill situation,
Yes.
that was a time when what was proposed was going to overload an existing, and we had to do something about it. So,
a
I
very
mean,
small example of
That's
that,
a
yeah.
tiny
Yes,
example.
yes,
It
exactly,
really is
though, you're
not.
right.
Yeah, it was a
it's
small
just-
small scale example to where we're
Very
going to
small
work with the developer to essentially front those costs with the ability for us to recapture those as development continues to happen. Yeah.
But that was, as you say.
So this would
very
be a larger
small.
scale.
Yeah, very
Much
small
larger scale.
example,
Which
yes.
a little bit. So I think.
Alderman Berger.
You finished?
Oh, I was going to go to the next slide, which I think will
Okay,
answer some of your
but
questions.
You said that when I asked about the Primus building, but yet down here it says Eastworks in review, and that's Primus.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
But so it's in South Prong.
It isn't, and I apologize, there's an error on the.
That's why I
the-
asked,
The
because
title
I'm
of
so
the slide, I
confused.
think, yeah.
I keep looking at that going, wait a minute.
I
so
think
that
that the
shouldn't
title
belong
should
either?
probably, it would more accurately be the status of the Spencer Creek interceptor, so my apologies for that
Okay,
one.
I just-
So,
Michelle, continue.
All right,
Go to that, yeah.
thanks.
We'll go- okay.
Get that slide off. It's creating too much confusion.
This is a really helpful slide. I think that will help a lot, clear up a lot of stuff. So this is, we developed this. So the dark black line is the South Prong interceptor. And I know it's probably a little bit hard to see because it's so blown up, but so the colored areas are the areas that are development impacts that so the red is availabilities that have already been approved. So you see I-65 running down the center. You see McEwen is the bottommost horizontal line street on there. The blue color is in the review process. So in that previous slide, the ones that we saw that were in a review. The important thing to note is the lilac color, the periwinkle, I'm not quite whatever color it is purplish. The areas that we anticipate being infilled, the larger, the increased density areas. And so those are the areas that are not necessarily proposed yet, but we anticipate those happening. And those are the areas that are going to have a huge impact that we're trying to plan for right now. Does that seem to? Okay. So we'll go to the next slide.
Michelle, if I could jump in real
I was
quick.
gonna
So,
say, it's still really hard. I mean, I made 2 other copies of maps because it's really hard to see. In fact, even my printed copy of that one, I had to write on there what all the streets are and everything. And I thought I was pretty familiar with it, but
I mean, we could certainly send you a better full page copy if that would be helpful.
yeah, let's plan on
Yeah.
doing that. So I'd like to point out that periwinkle color, we've not
Yeah, that's
received
good. Let's go
interest
back. Yeah.
from those properties yet. We've worked with, planning department was gracious enough to help us work through areas or identify areas that did kind of fit a profile that you would expect some redevelopment to occur. Time frame is really difficult to tell. So as part of that, we also need to estimate the densities and ultimately the impact or loading to the sewer system as well. So this is as Michelle mentioned, this is kind of the first steps into working this problem, but there's a ways to go. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so this is an actual output from our model the capacity tool that we use. And so I know this is kind of rehashing the same thing, but what I wanted to point out here is so the yellow boxes on this diagram are the nodes in which we anticipate the developments entering our collection system. So you can kind of see where some of those, Franklin Park and McEwen, all of those things. So the red lines that you have, which is the majority of this interceptor, show that it's reached at that 80% design capacity. So this is where it's kind of important to note that that granted capacity or the available capacity versus the granted capacity that Mark was talking about. So this is showing that it's over capacity. It's over that 80% capacity. We have capacity in that pipe right now. That's based off of the real-time flow that we see going in that pipe. When that pipe reaches 80% capacity based off of, we talked about during Ward's Mill, based off of our peaking factors and the anticipated flows we have, we're required by TDEC to look at upsizing that pipe. And so that's what this is showing. We have a current project in place that we started a while ago with a consultant to upsize this pipe. It doesn't extend as far down as we would need it to based on this new development. So we would need to look at need to look at kind of expanding the scope of that project. Kind of going back to South Prong, though, this presentation and the capacity fee that we're recommending is kind of solely focused around South Prong, because that's easily calculated by us. We know it's a finite area, and we know the development that's already been approved. We know the development that's in the review process. We can calculate those SFUEs and the amount that each developer should have to contribute toward that. The downstream Spencer Creek project that you can see is that up near the top, it's kind of hard to see the red line that's going more southwest, and then going into that green line, that's the Spencer Creek Interceptor. That'll be handled by a separate project, a separate discussion.
For context, that's the Aspen Grove Park area.
Okay, so go to the next slide. Okay, so we talked about we anticipate the need for additional capacity in this area through the upsizing of interceptors. I talked about the slide before about plans have been made by a consultant, so we're halfway there. We just need to kind of extend the scope of that. The issue that our department sees is that we anticipate this construction cost with the design, easement acquisition, construction inspection, and then the necessary improvements to bring the area back to the way it was, around in the $15 to $20 million range. So this is a pretty big project for us.
So the question would be then, would we cover that with the impact fees that you're proposing?
Well, so there would be a combination of all of that. So we're proposing to you to have a capacity fee for this area to help reduce some of that, to help increase the contribution from developers that would be solely benefited by this interceptor increase.
But I mean, are you talking about the 15 to 20 million, or are you talking about a particular part of that, or what?
Well, that's kind of the ratio that we would need to determine, because obviously some of this would be it's not an old interceptor, but some of it would be paid for out of the different funds that we would have to differentiate between.
That's part of what we would work through with you from a kind of a policy guidance standpoint. We're trying to introduce the concept to you tonight and give you an order of magnitude, but we don't have a specific, we need to do more work to give you some better developed options, I guess I'd say, around how we approach it. But this is the magnitude that we're talking about.
If I could, because this, as we're at this high level talking about it, the capacity fee, and you can see from just the South Prong interceptor, a $15 to $20 million impact. There are other areas, such as in the Spencer Creek interceptor, that may be similar as redevelopment occurs. And we don't want to apply these and other types of improvements to the overall city sanitary sewer impact fee, because that will really increase it. So we want to try to identify those areas where there's dense development, and this being one, that those projects have the capacity to help pay for it from different funds. But we'll bring that back to you. We wanted to get before you first, before we started meeting with the stakeholders, the developers, and sharing this with them.
Give us the shock.
That's, well, I don't know if it's shock. It's hopefully, and I know you do, you see that we're having, our team has the foresight to get out in front. We can approve these developments, they can go forward. We need to all work together to make this improvement at the South Prong interceptor and other areas of the community develop. It'll be a similar discussion.
Alderman Bransford.
Well, with that said, getting ahead and being proactive, that's great. So we talk about increased diameter of the line. So we go from wherever we are now to the maximum. The maximum is the complete build out of that area. How much diameter will we add or create?
So I don't
will
have
we
those.
maximize the line that will take care of any growth in that section?
Yeah, so that's where we're working with planning to try and understand what those numbers are, what the maximum density is that they would allow in those areas. So there's when we design a sewer line, we can't just build a 100-inch pipe. with a little bit of flow, because then we would get wastewater solids would start to settle out in the pipe and it would create a problem. So we kind of have to gauge how big we construct pipes with how much flow is in the pipe. But obviously we plan for development and we plan for that. So there's a potential for looking at some unique construction methods. I don't know what those are, side-by-side pipes or something, to make sure that we can accommodate growth depending on what the flow is versus what the ultimate
So are you
capacity would
saying
be.
that we could possibly come back in another 20 years and
We're hoping to not have to do that.
That's what I was trying to get at.
That's what we're trying to plan for.
Let's do
Yeah,
the
we don't
maximum
want to
can do.
acquire more easements in 20
Right.
years because they're not cheap now,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
all of that sort of stuff we want to try and avoid.
The idea would be is if possible, we will construct the pipes to handle the build out condition as it stands now. So as we get more and more density, though, things change, and right. I think I'm thinking of the Toys R Us over there with that massive parking lot. There's a lot of potential wastewater flows that can come from that one property alone. So.
Alderman Peterson.
The other thing isn't it going to have to be expended all the way to the plant? It can't just go to here.
So the great thing about the collection system is that the farther downstream it goes, the larger the pipe gets. So Spencer Creek is much larger than South Prong because it's collecting all the flow from Cool Springs and South Prong. But you're right. We will need to look at upsizing that pipe too. That's not as immediate a need as it is now, but as Cool Springs starts to take off, that could potentially be another discussion that we need to undertake.
Truly.
And that's where some of the overall sewer impact fees would be applied. As Michelle had mentioned, how we upgrade these pipes, depending where they are, will determine where the funding source is. But the section of the interceptor, the South Prong interceptor, is where we want to capture the capacity fee for that pipe, the conveyance system. We already have the treatment capacity that's covered through the impact fee, so.
It's a little bit like you've done with Parkland and road impact fees, where you've more tailored a quadrant or a section to their specific needs. This is somewhat similar to that, where you look at a specific need and then you look at a broader system need. So it could be a little bit like you look at collector roads versus an arterial. It has some parallels to that. So we're trying to do that introduce that same type of thinking to some of these very specific needs in these basin areas. So that's another way to think about it, I guess.
Any other questions?
I have one more slide.
One more slide.
The next-
Sorry. I just keep going.
We're legally required to have a next step slide, so we're going to do that.
Any other questions before we get to the next slide?
Okay, so we've kind of talked about we're kind of at a critical point now with issuing availabilities. We don't want to get to the point, Alderman Martin, where you kind of suggested we can't take any more. So a potential construction time frame with design all the way through construction and putting flow in that line, we anticipate being 3 to 4 years. So that includes easement acquisition, which is a long process. So this is not like tomorrow we can flip the switch and turn the interceptor on. So there's some design time in that. So as we talked about, we recommend kind of the implementation of a capacity fee to help us offset some of these costs. And I talked about kind of at the beginning of the presentation, our next steps would be to kind of, with your recommendation, to talk with stakeholders to learn when the timing of that is, so we can begin design and start moving through that process with our CIP planning.
Well, when I noticed it says, then the first people in, sometimes have to do it all, and then they can recoup as the later development comes in. They get repaid. Is that what we're thinking? It looked like that from what you're saying there.
On this slide,
recovery
It says
costs.
Recovery. Oh, recovery with recapture by the city.
Yeah, because they couldn't pay it all.
Well, I mean, we've done. Hey, didn't West Haven have to build the sewer all the way out? Yeah, and they got paid. back whenever the,
You know, as Michelle mentioned, and we definitely have to have more discussions, but this might be, because of the large cost, that would be something that the city would plan on making that upfront investment. And then as the development comes online, that capacity fee will help pay down any debt we would incur with that, or how we get that installed. There may be sections that a developer can install based on their development that they could recapture. And we have the tools in place to get this done. And our goal here is to allow things to keep proceeding smoothly, but we have to account for this upgrade in an area that's being redeveloped, essentially. And so we're gonna come back with those recommendations to you.
That's part of the options we'll
Yeah.
want to provide you, is what our role might be, what we could expect developers to do, how a recapture arrangement might work for us or for a developer, depending on who did what.
well, I guess my other question is, we do have a lot of debt in our water and sewer funds, which, have to be in business. I mean, they're not, the city can't just give them money, So what I'm saying is, this is a pretty important but pretty complex thing, because what's our debt capacity for water and sewer? I mean, I'm not asking any
Yeah,
answers,
right.
but I'm just saying.
That's part of what we'll
Yeah.
need to walk through in terms of the options and things you consider.
Alderman Berger.
So I can see maybe one big development, like Ann brought up West Haven, and if you did North McEwen, okay, over there across from Whole Foods, that's like one big development. But there's other developments around that. If you did Eastworks, which is the Primus area, that's a big entity unto itself. They may do their own thing, but when other redevelopments come in there, I don't know how we could ask or make one entity do it for all the rest of them around, but for their larger project, if they had a larger project, like those two I just mentioned, that would be more doable, I think, and equitable and fair, but I don't know how you would put that burden on one entity for all the areas around. And then the other thing is land use plan. I don't know if you had anything to say about that, but the land use plan encourages redevelopment. We are, in that land use plan, we're encouraging redevelopment. So people are really looking at some of these older areas and how they can be redeveloped and used more wisely. Because we have a lot of parking lots, and we're trying to get more people to build parking garages and get rid of that surface parking and utilize their areas. So I think we're not as ahead of the game as we think we are. I think we're like nip and tuck, like we better get going. This is coming. It's on our heels now. And these things are going to come in, and people are going to come in to redevelop the sites over there by Baker's Bridge Road and all those areas. So we're going to have a lot more of that coming, and I think that we can't dilly-dally on it. I think we need to really move ahead quickly.
Go ahead.
If I may, yeah, so we do have to be deliberate in moving forward. Michelle and her team have done a nice job of identifying the future potential problems. I think we're at a point now where, we're ahead of the game enough where we can plan for it and construct it without having really a lot of hiccups. But we gotta move forward in terms of the equity and who pays for it. And I think Vernon and Michelle spoke to it some, is that we don't want any single developer we want them to pay their equitable proportionate share, and hence the SFUE concept where we're charging them the amount of capacity they're taking up in the new line. So that's the trick in calculating that and what the future densities are going to be. We want to make sure we build it to appropriate size, not undersized, but not go so conservative where the project costs are absurd. So that's
Yeah,
the
you
balance we
can't
need to
get that out of
strike.
hand.
Yep.
And now look at your approximately 3 to 4 year time frame for easement and acquisition and then
Mm-hmm.
construction. And I'm thinking, yeah, we need to hold to that.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think we need to be pushing that out 5 to 8 years, because I think then we're going to be in trouble with that.
If I
Go
could,
ahead.
Vice Mayor, yeah, very quickly, because this is so complicated, but it's important to realize that historically, in the city of Franklin and many communities, we've required developers to put in the infrastructure. You used West Haven as one of many examples. And, acquiring easements in rural areas, farmland, is a lot less costly than when you're in the built environment, such as in Cool Springs along an I-65 corridor. And some of these upgrades are going to require tearing up sidewalks and roadways, and which really elevate the cost that to burden one development or a couple developments isn't truly equitable or financially feasible. And that's why, just want to share that piece with you, that we're critically looking at this and believe the capacity fee is the most equitable way to continue development, redevelopment in our community.
Go ahead, Margaret. One final comment.
One final comment. You do know that we have a tremendous number of residents and taxpayers who would like us to say, no, we are at capacity. We have grown enough. So when this comes out, and if we have to put up a dime, we're going to hear from them.
That's not
Well-
that's not what this is saying. No.
All right, but I'm telling you that there's nothing wrong with saying no. You say we don't want to say no. You can't do this because we don't have any more capacity. Well, unless we build more, we won't. But if we have to say no for a while, I don't really see there's anything wrong with that.
Well, we're trying to provide you with a framework that allows you to work with, here's how you would do it if you wanted to do it, and share those costs equitably across new development or redevelopment. So that's what we view as our job. You may have some policy decisions that you as a board need to look at. And so that's the framework we're trying to provide you with to help you make those calls. That's your part in terms of a policy decision.
I don't think this is the last we've heard of this.
No, it's
so-
not. I guarantee
so
you.
Got that right.
I think the presentations have been excellent. It's brought out a lot of comments. We are looking forward to the next meeting that we have. So whenever you have a chance to bring any more information up, let's go to the next item, item 14. And that is discussion of disposition of surplus real property, draft ordinance number 2019-11.
Shauna's coming up here to join us on this too, but we had talked about this a couple meetings ago in terms of identifying a component of our ordinance that requires a sealed bid process for the disposition of property that has a value of above $25,000. We had a general discussion with you. What Shauna has done working with me is to provide you with maybe a more specific approach of how we might modify that or amend that ordinance to raise that limit. We've suggested to $75,000, but then also provide a framework through which you could utilize land or the conveyance of that land in a project that had a public benefit. The example might be the Hill redevelopment, that you might have the conveyance of that property as part of the deal, the transaction to develop more an attainable housing neighborhood. There may be other public goals that you identify, but this provides a framework for you to identify that purpose, that public benefit, and then have a clear public process to help go along with that if you chose that alternative. So we tried to give you something to respond to that we thought was a balanced approach that still maybe addresses, this is a policy that was established in the 1990s. Land values are very different today, so that addresses that, but also provides this option for you to identify a public benefit, public purpose that might be integrated with a land transaction, but still provide for a very public way for you to do so. So, Shauna, if you want to add to that.
I'm just interested to hear what you think about it.
Any questions, comments? Ann?
Well, just the idea that, and I guess $75,000 is not that much money these days, is it? But, you know, the idea of having something put out for bids is probably a way to get the most money. And I think there's just a lot of things, there'll be a lot of things to think about on that. And I'm not sure.
Now, this doesn't stop you from doing that. You can still choose to put any piece of property out for bid. You would have to decide as a group that there is a public purpose or public benefit to that property before we would even entertain doing any other way of disposing the property. You would have to actually affirmatively say that property could be of public benefit. Otherwise, you would sell it by a sealed bid, just like you do now.
Alderman McClendon.
So essentially, what we got tonight is to raise the threshold from 25 to 75.
Right, and to give you.
Let me do this, sorry. What we got tonight was essentially to raise the threshold from 25,000 to 75,000.
Right, and to give you one more tool in your toolbox to to be able to dispose of property other than solely by sealed bid.
So it's really got two parts to it.
Yeah, two
It
parts.
raises from 25 to 75, the sealed bid threshold, but then it does also provide an option for you to do something different where you've identified a purpose you want to achieve, and then.
But at 75,000, it shall be sold by bid.
No, that is an option.
Are you
Well,
reading
that-
1 and 2?
Yeah. 2, when the board has determined that the value of the property is reasonably likely to be greater than $75,000, then the property shall be sold by sealed bid.
Well, we can take out shall. I just.
No,
well,
I'm not asking you
yeah.
to take it out.
What
That's
we did,
not our intent.
Yeah, and we added 3, which says in the alternative,
Yeah.
the board may determine that the property is well suited to be a public benefit, and would like to pick not only the people who would purchase it, but the purpose for which it would be used.
Okay, so,
Choice.
yeah, here's the problem. We all know that we would not do something nefarious. But our confidence in ourselves is not necessarily shared by people who show up here for one issue. And so it's impossible to know what the future might hold. But the first time that this board goes and steers a piece of property to an intended recipient and does not do a sealed bid process, the potential backlash and the potential undermining of this board's credibility will be huge. And I, for one, would rather, I mean, if I'm forced to pick between a scenario where we just sealed bid things and live with the outcome, or the board can fall backwards, maybe even unknowingly, into a scandal or the appearance of a scandal, then I'm going to pick the safe route, because the atmosphere today is extreme suspicion and cynicism. And I don't see an upside worth getting by creating a scenario where the board can essentially pick the recipient and set the price merely by saying it's a public interest, public benefit. That goes against every bit of ensuring even the appearance of impropriety does not surface. So I get it. We all want flexibility, but I think I can say with confidence that as long as I'm sitting on the board of mayor and aldermen, I will never support option 3, not only as an ordinance element, but if it were passed, also never as a choice for any individual piece of surplus. It's just rife with the potential for the appearance of impropriety or even the actual, the actual existence of impropriety. I mean, imagine if we had option 3 available when we debated and discussed the surplus property that we've now entered into a process with the golf course. All right? And imagine if competing interests were the affordable housing group, the museum group, and the golf course. And imagine if we picked to sell that property to one of those 3 by vote and set the price, favorably. Imagine the backlash. There was a lot of attention on that event. We had people come in here and speak to each of us. And granted, we weren't going to sell it, but I don't see an upside here that outweighs the potential for scandal and backlash.
Would it make you feel more comfortable if we required that the sale had to be at least appraised value or higher?
Well, even then, okay, so think back to the 5 Points Post Office. We had this piece of property. If we had wanted to sell it, and we might have had 5 bidders that were all willing to pay at least appraised price. What are we going to do? Negotiate with them like we're selling a house that we privately own individually and maybe turn down the best price? We are stewards of the taxpayers. This sets up a scenario where you could pick the winner for reasons that, would be questionable. I absolutely would. If we're going to start picking winners, then the appraised value has to be the floor. I mean, whether we write that in or not, that's got to be understood. Should be written in. But I don't want to be sitting here faced with people pitching their pitch, making their pitch, and us picking winners for surplus property.
I guess I would say what we do now is we use a lease arrangement
Yeah.
to work around this, and you end up picking a winner.
We do a lease, but
a long-term lease.
Yeah, and that's I think a little different than an outright sale of surplus property. I mean, this surplus property could be a vehicle. This surplus property could be, not everything's going to get the full. I think the more attention the public has for something, the less likely there is to be some kind of a problem. But what if we had a non-consent agenda item where we were, disposing of a nice police vehicle like our emergency vehicle, and it's just, I can think of a million scenarios where a sealed bid insulates us from any of those problems, and anything else invites those problems.
Alderman Blanton and then Alderman Berger.
I just want to quickly remind everybody, how does that stack up to the idea that we sold the old jail for $1 or whatever it was to the Heritage Foundation? Where does that fit into this file folder of how we do things?
The way that one fit was it was in such horrendous shape.
Right,
that
but look
the
at the
value
land
of it was
values.
below the $25,000 threshold.
Right, I think there's more work to be done, because I think we do have something we're trying to achieve, not only presently, but probably later. And in a city like Franklin, where our land values are so high, if it's our land, I think we do have the right to dictate its use. you know? I mean, we dictated in other ways with zoning and Vision Franklin and land use plans. I mean, those are all subjective as well. So I'm not saying, I don't know, he brings up great points, but I do think that if it's city surplus land, there should be a way that we can achieve what we want the use to be moving forward.
Alderman Berger.
There's good points for both of these things. Miranda, you made some great points. Dana, you did too. And I'm looking at this. First of all, let me ask you a question. Heritage Foundation. So that building, did we sell? I'm trying to remember. Did we just sell the building? But we also sold the land.
We conveyed the property to
We
them.
conveyed the entire property. Wow. So when I look back at that, I wonder how much the property itself is worth. What?
in the river.
We
Well,
assessed that at the
is
time.
it- Yeah, I remember that, but I'm trying to remember how that all went, because part of that's not in the floodplain at all. Part of it is. All right, so I think that if you look at this, let me get back out of this so I can get back over here. Okay, so number 2 says, reasonably likely to be greater than 75,000, then the city shall have the right to reject and refuse any and all bids. Okay, that's one scenario, but I'm looking at this other one on 3, and I don't see, in any case, the board shall, by resolution, I don't know, is that the word we were talking
It's
about
meant,
there?
it's meant to be an option, yeah.
Yeah.
The shell in number 2 is really the option for disposition under a sealed bid approach. Item 3 gives you an alternative where the board would publicly declare, we want to use this property for this purpose, and then determine that there would be a public process for that decision to be made. So, for example, you would say, we want to use this property for the development of attainable housing. And we would put it out for proposals, and part of that transaction would be the conveyance of that property. But you would select who you thought was best suited to do that development and achieve the goal that you've identified, whatever that goal is. It might be housing that hits a certain price point, delivers the type of neighborhood that you're looking for, and part of what you put in to achieve that goal is the value of that property. And there could, you could still have a part of the transaction where you get some payment for it, but you're achieving whatever your publicly declared goal is, and a public process to get there. That's the concept that we're trying to provide you with, that could give you a way to do it, and it's a way to try to provide some safeguards to address the concerns that Alderman McClendon brought up directly, which is, by having it be very clearly determined and declared on the front end, and then a public process identified that takes us through it, that it hopefully helps show that you're achieving a public benefit out of however you do this. And it gets us out of this
Quandary.
mode right
Yeah,
now where
yeah,
we have to use
yeah.
the lease as a mechanism for
Yeah.
you to have
Yeah.
make a decision about how the property gets redeveloped or
Yeah,
reused.
That can be a bit stifling at times.
But it's a
And-
hard issue,
and I
no doubt.
I understand that can be a bit stifling at times, but still. And then on number 3, when it talks about, I think the only way you could do that really is that you establish, the public process is going to be very important. If this is ever established, the public process is going to be more important. That's the key words in that whole thing, is how that public process is established, so.
Alderman Bransford, Alderman Peterson.
Okay. Yeah, this is very interesting. For the public benefit, and we have visited other cities. I think Charleston, for instance, Charleston, South Carolina. They had abandoned houses and things that was eventually owned by the city, that they took ownership of those properties, and then they further developed those for affordable housing types of things.
And they worked with a third party, like
and
a
they were, yeah,
a nonprofit.
So the will of the board and the will of the mayor in that particular city is what motivated and moved and pushed those types of public benefit decisions. So I think it's very feasible for us to do this here. Yeah, there's some bad characters out there, but I think for our community, I would like to think that there would be good-minded people who would see public benefit. And once we can look at other cities that have done this with city properties, and they have not been ran out of town. So,
Alderman Peterson.
I guess, in thinking about where the new owner are owners, so then if they decide to resell it,
Well, the good thing about, if there is a good thing about doing it this way, it would be that you could more likely than not be able to put a deed restriction on it,
which is says what?
whatever your purpose is. So if you would want to use the property for affordable housing and you wanted to keep it at a certain price point, or attach it to a HUD definition of whatever that might be, you would put that on the deed once you've picked your property owner or owners moving forward, and then all the deeds that are sold per home would have to have that same restriction on it.
Saying what? What would the
That-
restriction say?
That the home would have to remain affordable for however long you wanted it to be. So if your purpose is affordable homes at this price point on this particular lot, the deed restriction would be that it would be affordable for 50 years or 99 years or, whatever you decided it to be.
But then the person who owns it then would only be able to sell for X amount of money, is that it?
That is how a lot of affordable housing
Habitat.
projects
It's been done that
work.
way in some
I
places.
know it
Some
has
places.
in a lot of places, but I'm just saying,
It's an option for you. This is just one example.
Just
There
one
may be
example
other-
of
yeah.
something you could do.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Nashville, are they doing that?
Well, in Nashville, they don't have a restriction that they have to do a sealed bid for a certain amount.
No, I mean for any kind of affordable housing.
I
then
don't know if they're putting
see,
deed restrictions
you
on it.
know, that's a
A
complicated.
number of communities have.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, we've seen that.
I do not
absolutely,
know
but
that.
that is a very complicated thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it is worth looking at what some of those communities do if we ever get to that
And this
point.
ordinance does not propose that specifically.
doesn't.
It's
It was-
really
But-
about you choosing a path, whatever that use might be, to convey property as part of achieving a goal.
However, then, once it is conveyed, if there is not something like
Yeah.
this, then the owners can do whatever they want to
Yeah, it
with
could be a recreational facility. And you would want to put a deed restriction that it would remain a recreational use for some period of time. I mean, those are all things that you would have to consider to maintain or enforce the use that you have set out with this.
Right, and they're similar to like a land trust where you put property for a particular purpose for a particular period of time. It could be anything, if we wanted it to remain parkland, but we didn't want to maintain the parkland anymore. Maybe it's something that we really think would be great to the community, but we don't want to own it anymore. We would be able to put any sort of deed restriction on any property, but if you sell it by sealed bid, I'm not sure how you would actually put a deed restriction on something like that.
I agree, but I'm just saying, I don't know how, in the long run, the restrictions work.
Right.
Thank you, and I assume that you've heard some interesting comments. So if there's anything that you want to do to this to bring it back at some point in time, it would be appropriate. And if there's no other questions, I think we need to adjourn. We'll come back at 7 o'clock and have the board meeting. So we are adjourned.